I got my first corporate job in 2016 in a company called Willis Towers Watson. Before that, I had only worked in the arts. I had spent years freelancing in film production and I was tired of having no money. Film production is a very physical thing. You have to go to film sets and be there all day. So when a sports injury took me physically out of the office for 6 months, I used that time to go temping. The job that I got was an admin assistant in the DB department in retirement. I needed that job, I was financially dependent on it, and they needed people like me to create pension comms that you could understand, the employees. I spent the next 5 years doing that job across three of the world's biggest consultancies. And by the time I left Aon in 2022, I had made it all the way to leading comms. In my job as a pension communications consultant, I would work with actuaries, trustees, HR directors, financial planners, employees, and investment managers. The whole reason that I was hired with no experience in finance, paid more than I would ever get in the film industry, retained, trained, and then elevated into leadership very, very quickly is not because I'm an exceptional superstar. It's because they really needed somebody to fill the gap between what actuaries and investment managers say and what the people whose money is at the bottom of this cake actually understand. That meant a day in my life usually meant the first person that would call me in the morning was some kind of solutions architect, technologist, or actuary. These are the people that I spent most of my time with, going, huh? What? Paddy, say that again. What do you mean? But why, Paddy? I don't understand. How am I going to tell that to the members? And after this bickering back and forth for hours, days, weeks, whatever it took to get the technical translated enough for the HR team to be confident in the messaging and ship it out to staff. And I want to tell you what I learned about pensions. People get confused because they see that BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and Fidelity are the biggest owners of all of these companies. It's a conspiracy. The whole world is run by Larry Fink. And yeah, he's making the decisions all right, but it is not his authority that he is making them with. It is delegated authority that was given to him from the HR team on your behalf. So let me strip it all back. Most people these days have an employer pension scheme. Most employer pension schemes are mandatory as well. They commit you to a contribution from salary and they tell you they will match it. Some of them don't even match it. If you are auto-enrolled in a mandatory pension scheme, you are basically being forced to save for retirement. The schemes and the asset managers told me my work was valuable because you needed to save for retirement. But that concept of the employee having to save for their own retirement is actually very new. So new, in fact, that as late as 2018, 2019, I was still doing member comms for old DB pension wind-ups. A DB pension is called a defined benefit pension. There's DB and then there's DC, that's defined contribution. DB, deferred benefit, was seen as deferred wages. You earned it, you worked for it. But your employer promised you a guaranteed income for the rest of your life because of your years of service to the company. It didn't matter how the market performed, it didn't matter how the company performed, it didn't matter how you performed. It was just based on years of service. Up until the late 1970s, this was how all occupational pensions worked across the UK, Europe, and the United States. It was not your responsibility to save for retirement, and it was not your responsibility to invest for it, which it is now. And the whole industry was organised around one calculation: your pensionable salary, your years of service, and the accrual rate. This was the only variable set by the company and outlined to you when you joined. So you leave school, you get your first job, you work there for 5 years, your salary is 40,000. Even if you leave that job Even if interest rates collapse, even if the market explodes, these people promise you this calculation at retirement. The history of this kind of pension goes all the way back to the Romans. The Roman state paid retirement stipends to legionaries from around 13 BC under Augustus. Their model was explicit: loyalty in exchange for security. You gave your life to fight for the empire, and when you could no longer feed yourself, the empire fed you. In the 1970s, employers started complaining that these pensions were too expensive. They said that people were living longer and the market was far more risky, and they were ending up holding the difference and it was costing them money. But how we ended up with the current system where employees have to become investors to save for retirement, that was actually an accident, a loophole in IRS tax law. In the US, the mechanism appeared almost by accident. The Revenue Act of 1978 buried a small provision, Section 401k, intended to limit executives' tax-advantaged profit-sharing schemes. Nobody paid attention for 2 years. Then, Ted Benna, a benefits consultant at a Pennsylvania firm called Johnson Companies, read it differently. He worked out that it could function as a mass employee saving vehicle with pre-tax contributions. He designed a plan, and his client first rejected it out of fear that the government would close the loophole once it realised the tax revenue loss. Benna went on to implement the first 401k at his own company in 1980 instead, and the IRS approved. By 1985, most major American corporations were rushing to adopt it as fast as they could. Benna himself later said that he had created a monster. The government tried to appeal the provision twice, but corporate America lobbied hard to keep it. Corporate America won. In the UK, the dismantling of the defined benefit pension was explicit, ideological, and state-run. Thatcher's 1986 Financial Services Act introduced personal pensions and, critically, made it illegal for employers to require scheme membership as a condition of employment. Thatcher's government actually managed to convince workers that having a pension funded solely by the employer was bad for them. The sales pitch was sophisticated enough that most workers really did believe this. Before the 1986 Act, an employer could make membership of a DB pension compulsory or a condition of your employment. You wanted the job, you joined the scheme. We insist on paying you your salary for the rest of your life. When everybody was in, contributions flowed at scale, though the scheme was fully funded across a broad membership base. The 1986 Act removed that power. Employers could no longer require you to join the scheme, and workers were encouraged to contribute to their own private personal pension instead. Personal pensions were sold on 4 claims: portability, your pot moves with you when you change jobs; control, you can now control where you invest your money, you can make the choices about it, you can watch it grow; ownership, it's yours, not the company's, they can't take it away from you; and upsides, if the market booms, you benefit directly. They promised you that if you took out a personal pension and stopped being a citizen in a society, that you would get rich. Every one of these claims is technically in a narrow way true, but massively, grossly, strategically misleading. Firstly, DB pensions do stay with the old employer, but they still pay out at the end of your life. So you could have multiple DB pensions. You weren't told that though. Now, the worker took all of the investment risk, all of the inflation risk that the employer used to carry, with none of the consultants, none of the actuaries, none of the education. Most of them don't even know that their pensions are invested. Never mind that they have the option to make choices about it. The upside argument only works if the markets always go up. Multiple crashes have proven that they don't, and the only way to keep a market growing forever is to get more extreme and extractive. And the people who did the selling and the wind-up, the insurance companies, the salespeople, the advisors, they were paid huge commission on every pension that they could transfer from DB to DC. Also, the scandal of Robert Maxwell stealing the mirror pensions, that was actually political cover used to accelerate the regulation that made the DB schemes more expensive.